Welcome to this episode of DIY3DTech.com. In this episode, we're going to measure the vibration signature of the Creality CR10. So a while back, I was talking about measuring vibration signatures on the Tron XE. And a viewer pointed out, hey, why don't you use a cell phone? And I thought, hey, that's a good idea. So I went out to the App Store, and there really wasn't a big collection of apps out there for vibration sensing, but I did find this one, which is pretty interesting. And actually, it seems folks are using this for drones and things like that. So I decided to actually download it. It was about $4 or $5. I'll have the link down below for it. And run it on my iPhone 4. I've got this. I do a lot of time-lapse photography of 3D prints with this and stuff. But the next question became, how do you mount this to the printer? So I went off to Thingiverse, and I actually found this guy, which is really interesting. It was an open SCAD mount for a bicycle, and I modified it to actually print to fit on any 20 by 20 Maker Rail frame. And the nice part about it is it locks in, so you can change the orientation of the phone, and it's got so you can put zip strips, cable ties, whatever you want to call them, around here to actually cinch it to it. Now for the Creality, this just snugs on and fits at the top, and I'll show you that in a minute. And then what happens is the phone actually sits in here like this. Now I'm not sure how much of this you can see. I don't want to go into that. The only thing with this is this collects a lot of high frequency data. It only takes a very short snapshot of time. So it only records like 80 seconds of data, and that's a pretty big file. It actually yields about 4,000 data points in that 81 or 87 second file. Actually, because if we go to data acquisition, I think I've got it set for 81.92 seconds. Autosave. So it's got a number of settings here, and I'm sampling at 50 hertz. So basically 50 times a second I'm sampling the vibration, because again, for the various steps and things like that, you're going to need a rather quick sample time. So I'm going to collect some samples of this, and then what I'm going to do is export it. You can connect this. You can either email the CSVs to yourself, or you can connect it up to, what the heck's the program? I can't remember, iTunes, and download them from there. So that's what I do, is actually connect it to my Mac Mini and download them, and then I open them on Excel in my PC. So let's head over to the printer. Let's collect some data, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to print one of these, one of my test blocks, if you will, and kind of get some motion signatures, because I want to see what the motion of this guy looks like, both in X, Y, and Z. So let's head over there. Okay, as you can see, we have the printer printing, and I've got the iPhone set up sampling data. And so I've got it in the orientation which matches the printer. So I have Y, X, and then obviously Z. So it's collecting data. I'm going to let it collect a couple runs of data. I can see it on the screen. And basically you can see the head moving down here. So what I want to get is the XY movements of this, as well as the Z movements, and see what they look like. So far I don't see anything too exciting on the screen. It does, as it's going through, produce some nice bar graphs. Now I'm running an 80-some second capture here of data, which basically gets roughly, I think, one full layer, if you will, because I'm doing a 20% infill here. So it's not really that big of a run, and it's, in short, 10 millimeters by 10 millimeters for the 20% infill. So I'm going to go ahead, finish capturing this data, and I tell you what, let's go meet back at the computer, take a look at what this data looks like, and see if we see anything interesting. So let's head over to the computer. Okay, welcome back. We're now in the computer, and I've downloaded all the data sets from the phone to the computer. So what the phone actually does is creates multiple data sets, and each data set is 81.92 seconds long and contains 50 samplings, I'll get that right, per second. So because remember, we set the sampling rate for 50 hertz. And So we've now got that in here, and what I've done is I've taken one of the data files from the middle of the print because I didn't want something at the beginning or the end, and I've set it up to take a little bit deeper statistical look at it. Now, before you guys ask, I also collected a control set of data for this where the printer was simply turned on and I ran a number of readings, and again I took the middle reading from this. Not that it really makes a difference, I think, but I just wanted to make sure I got a representative sample without a lot of extraneous data in it. Now, one of the pieces I want to take a quick look at is the control graphs for this. Now, one of the pieces that we see here is the numbers are very small. Now, I believe these are actually in grams from the website, so we're looking at some very small numbers, and one of the pieces I want to focus on is actually the z-axis here. So we take a look here, so it's 0.01 grams, and if you look at the other ones, they're even smaller. So I'm interested in the amount of actual up and down motion, because I'm going to give this away a little bit. I'm a little bit surprised at the Z motion of the printer, but we'll get into that a bit. Also, one of the pieces I want to point out is notice the negative and positive movements, and so let's take a quick look. This image is from the actual application's website, so I wanted to show you guys this. So here's a Y plus, an X plus, a Z plus. So the reverse are obviously negatives, and so the actual printer is moving in both directions, and so if it's sitting in a stable state in the middle here, it's going to be 0. So we're going to be dealing with negative moving numbers and positive moving numbers. So please keep that in mind, and this will give you a little bit of perspective. Now, as I mentioned before, I lined the phone so it matched the printer in these perspectives, so I didn't have to swap any type of numbers. In other words, turn numbers positive or negative, etc. So let's go ahead. Let's take a quick look at the data. So one of the pieces with the data I've added, because remember we took it at 50 Hertz, so I've taken a 50 unit moving average to kind of help show or bring out some of the data, because there is a lot of noise here. But one of the things, again, I'm a little bit surprised at how much noise there is in the z-axis, how much the printer is actually moving up and down. Now, remember, let's go back here to the control numbers. So I had about 0.005 plus or minus on the z-axis. So now if I go to my data, I'm actually far above this with this number. So I'm getting a lot of vertical oscillation, if you will, which is a little bit surprising to me. Now again, with this raw data, it really doesn't tell me too much in any of the axes, because it just simply seems to be moving. However, if we look again at the raw data, one of the things that this does appear to do is extrapolate frequency data from this. Now, I don't really totally understand what the app is doing here, but I'm making some guesses. It's doing a to and from value comparison and taking the delta and determining some sort of frequency behind it, because one of the things, if we look at the raw data, we have 4,775 data points, and if we look at the frequency data, we have 2,038, so basically half. And so we're roughly at half the data points that we had before. So again, this is where I'm really thinking that this is using a to and from to create some sort of frequency calculation. So from 2 data points, I'm not quite sure. If somebody knows a little bit more, please hit me up in the comments below. However, one of the big pieces that now becomes a little bit self-evident here is this Z movement here, and I believe this is actually a Z movement of the carriage, because the other thing is, if we look up here at the X, we see a similar movement up here. And this is something I would expect, obviously, as the z-axis is moving. Now, maybe I'm reading a little bit too much into this, but you see here that this is X tapers a little bit, because there's, well, at least on my Creality CR10, there's only one lead screw. So I'm going to expect some kind of harmonic run out, because when I move the z-axis, or sorry, when the z-axis goes up, what's going to happen is I'm going to expect some movement in the positive direction to the right. if you understand what I'm saying, is the carriage goes up. The lead screw side is going to lead. The non-powered side is going to follow. So I'm going to expect some kind of anomalies here, which there does appear to be. Now, again, I might be reading a little bit into that, but I find it interesting. I really don't see too much here in the Y movement, except every time I hit my highlight, it wants to pop up and change it because it thinks I want to do something with it. But if I go over here, you can kind of see the bed motion here. So this is actually pretty interesting. So we're seeing some motion here. But again, even with this frequency data, I find it interesting, but really not overly revealing outside of I think the obvious, and the fact is I'm seeing a lot of Z motion. Now, what I also did is I created a histogram. Now, here's where we really see the distribution of the negative versus positive going numbers. And one of the things you'll notice is it's pretty interesting. X seems to be somewhat kind of interestingly uniform. So we see that we have these runouts to the negative numbers, and then we see a tail to the positive numbers as it tails this way, which is kind of interesting. So there's a kurtosis to how this distribution is leaning. So it's moving to the positive side. So it's moving actually from left to right, which is a little bit what I would expect to see, because it's going to sweep from left to right as it creates it, then return left. And there's also, I think, going to be, as I mentioned before in looking at the frequency data, as the lead screw moves up, there's going to be, I think, oscillations in the X. The Y here is also pretty interesting because, again, it appears that there's more negative motion than there is positive motion if we look on the sides and we look at this data. And I'll actually put this Excel spreadsheet out on the internet, and you can download it and take a look at it and play with it and do what you want with it, because maybe you can come up with some more than I, because I'm just pretty much a layman that understands a little bit about statistics, kind of reading something into this. The other piece is, again, coming back to the Z-axis. Now notice in my control set, even though the force is different down here, the distribution roughly matches this distribution up here in the actual data that we see. So I find it interesting, and I may actually take that one out as an outlier from the control set. But again, you can kind of see the distribution here, and it's fairly uniform because we have centered our last negative moving, and then we have our positive moving. So I actually find this very interesting. I did not expect this distribution. What I'm reading from all this is that the printer actually, to a certain extent, is bouncing up and down, or moving or oscillating in an upward and downward direction. With this is I'm really wondering if it wouldn't benefit from some sort of sitting on top of some sort of vibration dampeners. I may do some experimentation with that. I'd like to know what you guys think. So having shared all this data with you and everything and put this out on the internet, what do you think? I mean, all in all, to be honest with you, I don't see any oscillations inside the physical frame of this thing that would make me overly concerned, to be honest, which is really kind of interesting because with that very tall gantry, I expected to see actually far more sway. And this is one of the things I think, a lot of folks, and I may take some hate mail on this, but, with printers like the Wanhao or the Creality CR10, everybody seems to get really worked up about those Z-axis braces, and quite frankly, I've never seen a huge value in print improvement by putting those in, so long as it's pretty solid to begin with. In both like the Wanhao and the Creality CR10 I don't think you're going to get a lot by putting Z braces on it. So anyways, hopefully you found this all interesting. If you did, hey, give it a big thumbs up. Also, hit me in the comments below if you think putting vibration dampeners or sitting this on vibration dampening pads would improve this. I may actually give that a shot. Cut up a mouse pad or something and try that, or some neoprene. Let me know what you guys think below. And cheers, and we'll see you. Oh, don't forget the swag shop because holidays are coming. Subscribe button. I almost forgot that because I'm staring at the data. And we'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers.
Please click like below and subscribe to the channel to keep up to date on all